Touchstone Pictures presents
Okay, well, thank you for that.
a motion picture that's so big,
Say what?
so hot,
These pipes are clean!
so manly. It's sure to be an all-time classic. Perhaps. Chris Elliot,
You've been like the drunken, abusive grandfather I never had.
Cabin Boy,
I'm at my wit's end. I can't take it.
rated PG-13. Now playing at a theater near you.
Cabin Boy is a 1994 American fantasy comedy film directed by Adam Resnick and co-produced by Tim Burton. The film stars Chris Elliot in his first starring role on film. The film also stars Melora Walters, Brian Doyle Murray, Andy Richter, Rich Brinkley, Brian James, and has cameos from Mike Starr, Ricky Lake, and David Letterman. Cabin Boy tells the tale of Nathaniel Mayweather, a snobby prep school alum who on his way back home to daddy takes a wrong turn and finds himself on board the Filthy Whore, a rundown ship ran by stinking scoundrels on a 3-month fishing run. When he swindles them in a change in routes, he finds himself as the ship's new cabin boy as they travel through Hell's Bucket, a peculiar and unpredictably wacky part of the sea. The film spawned from the ashes of the wrongfully canceled TV show Get a Life, done by Resnick and Elliot, which was a wacky and satirical take on the sitcom trope, going totally over everybody's head at the time. I will be covering that series on TV Wasteland. Be sure to subscribe. Like right now, go do that. But the show garnered a huge audience regardless who did get it. Even some celebrity fans like Dan the Automator, Built to Spill, who directly referenced the show in a song, and a huge fan of the show at the time was Tim Burton. Not that that made it any easier for Elliot and Resnick to get into a room with producers willing to listen to them after the show was canceled. Which is a shame, as their particular brand of comedy would basically be the norm just a few years later. And they worked their asses off to get there. Elliot and Resnick would previously both work as writers on David Letterman for years, giving the show some of its best moments of the era, and giving them some real clout in the business. We did see Chris Elliot in films around this time, some weird ones, in retrospect for him to be in, but not until Get a Life did we see his genius. And not until Cabin Boy did we get a starring role. Everybody gets one, I guess. While Hollywood might not have been on their side, judging the duo based on their failed TV show, as said before, someone who did see it did get their potential, and that was none other than Tim Burton, who was on top of the world at the time. Along with Resnick and Elliot, Cabin Boy was constructed and Burton was supposed to direct, but when his passion project Ed Wood was greenlit, he gladly transferred control fully to the Get a Life team. Seemingly. However, Burton's influence still shows throughout. He actually designed this floating cupcake right here, and he acted as producer. Cabin Boy excels with its style, taking a lot of cues from classic films, and having a really amazing look here, far better than any other of the spoof comedies coming out at the time. Really driving home the fantastical elements, playing as an almost updated, wackier Odyssey. Cabin Boy is one of the last of its kind, being a real spectacle regardless of genre, with some amazing practical effects and makeup effects. The heavy lifting as far as the effects work was done by Alterian Studios under Tony Gardner, the magicians behind films like the Blob remake, Dark Man, Freaked, Hocus Pocus, the list goes on. Tony is still working hard today, but back in the heyday, Alterian Studios was the place to call for this shit. This film is one of those that's kind of well known for particular scenes in general, and actually kind of demands a second viewing, but I guess I can see why people didn't flock to this one. It is extremely silly, relying on a lot of gags that are either love 'em or hate 'em. In fact, I guess that's one way to describe Chris Elliot. You either love him or you hate him. Another reason people remember this movie is that it's David Letterman's only character performance in a film, like ever. When Elliot was writing for Letterman, he found that if you can make Dave laugh, he'll have you back next week and he might even put you on TV. So a friendship was formed and Letterman lent his acting chops to the production.
Hey, would you like to buy a monkey?
No, I don't want to buy a monkey.
Are you sure?
No, I'm on my way. Your
All right.
family must be very proud
All
of
right,
you.
we'll see you, honey. Hey, wait a minute. Jennifer, come here.
The gag is still well remembered and was even lampooned that year at the Oscars.
Would you like to buy a monkey? Would you like to buy a monkey?
I can do one bigger.
Want to buy a donkey? A monkey.
Would you like to buy a monkey?
The film is set in this bizarre limbo of modern day and turn of the century aesthetic, kind of having a real old style kind of feel throughout, but also featuring modern stuff like microwaves and gum and phones. Clearly understanding what it is, even if the critics didn't. In fact, there's impeccable set design here. Cool things like this, look at the sky right here, and like these storm scenes and such. Stuff like that could have easily been phoned in. Instead, it's completely soaked in style. There are a lot of great scenes in this flick. Let me show you my favorite one.
Well, it was nice almost communicating with you.
Kiddo, you are a number one in my book. You know that? You are top dollar. You know, I honestly think we're onto something here. Hey, nice shoes. Look.
That one.
See ya!
I was able to talk to FX Maestro CHET ZAR, who worked on the film. He's also the guy behind some of the most memorable creations of our lifetime, and it was very interesting to learn about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, as Chet worked for Tony Gardner and Alterian Studios in their heyday. I will link my other conversations with Chet in the description, but for now, here he is talking a bit about working on Cabin Boy.
Yeah, Cabin Boy, because we did that too. We did Cabin Boy. Yeah, we did a little miniature. I sculpted a miniature head of Chris Elliot for like a miniature shot, and we did Collie, who has all the arms. The blue lady, yeah, we did her, and we did the Ricky Lake thing. All the effects, I think we did. Yeah, he was cool, but it's like I was a huge Chris Elliot fan, and from Get a Life. I don't know if you remember that show called Get a Life. It was like this weird show on Fox in the early 90s or late 80s. It's really funny. You can see it on, I think, YouTube now. Totally weird Chris Elliot sense of humor. And I remember him from that show and on David Letterman. And so I was like a big fan of his. And he came in and he was nice. He wasn't cracking jokes or anything. He was just like a regular guy. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm such a huge fan of Get a Life. And he's like, yeah, that show wasn't really that funny, actually. And I was like, no, man, it's amazing. And he was telling us how kind of Fox screwed the show because they didn't know what to do with it because it was a really weird show, totally weird sense of humor. And so they just wouldn't promote it, so it never got any traction.
Over the years, Resnick and Elliot would talk about how much the film affected them, negatively. They were basically unhireable, as they were known as the Cabin Boy guys. And the film really seemed to anger some people for some odd reason. Years later, when Resnick was asked about it, he had this to say. I feel like I've talked about this a lot. But look, I've had a lot of bad luck, and I've also made some bad choices. Cabin Boy was a Tim Burton thing. He loved Chris Elliot and wanted to do another Pee-wee's Big Adventure type comedy. Chris, who's my best friend, brought me along in 1993 to brainstorm with Tim, and the idea was we'd write it and Tim would direct. So Chris, Tim, and I came up with this Cabin Boy idea, based on Chris's very funny notion of doing a classic sea adventure, like the 1937 MGM movie Captain's Courageous. We wrote it and gave it to Tim, who loved the script. We were ready to go, but at the last minute Tim pulled out and suggested I direct it. I said no because I felt I wasn't ready. Other than some remotes and things at Letterman, I had no real directing experience. And more importantly, if I were going to direct my first movie, Cabin Boy would be the last sort of thing I'd come up with. It was written specifically for Tim's sensibility, but everyone started pushing, saying it would be the mistake of a lifetime to pass up this opportunity, and ultimately, I came to believe that. After Cabin Boy, I never wanted to direct again. That's probably the worst thing that came out of the whole thing for me. Being scared off of something and never wanting to give it another chance. Both Chris and I were damaged in so many ways after that movie. I know that for a long time, I just kind of gave up. I didn't have the strength to endure that level of failure and embarrassment. I felt so ashamed. Chris and I will go to our graves unable to understand why so much hatred and attention was showered on us. Cabin Boy literally seemed to piss people off. This silly movie that should have just been dismissed and allowed to disappear like so many other crappy little comedies. To even dismiss it, it would take too much energy. We were such tiny targets, but it felt like the whole world was out to kill us. I'll never understand it. But people get it now, I guess. But I think that's mostly due to passage of time. As it turns out, it's not as awful as it was made out to believe. Then again, it's no masterpiece. On the next episode of Staunch on Film, as part of a very Corey Christmas, which will be happening all month long in December, we have the first of 2 new episodes featuring the Coreys. First, we'll be looking back at the long-lost, forgotten late-night erotic thriller starring none other than Corey Feldman himself, Eel Obsession. Subscribe to stay notified. And hey, I appreciate all of my viewers and I want to hear from you. Let me know what you think. I want to see what you have to say down in the comments. Let me know and find me on Instagram. Until next time, folks.
See you around, buddy. That's a cute kid.
Don't forget to rewind.